Welcome to Module 9 of 11 modules of the Certificate 4 of Project Management course presented by Charter Australia. Module 9, Contract Management. As part of a project, we often need to procure goods or services from outside the organisation. This requires a formal process of selection, culminating in the signing of a contractual agreement. In large organisations, we sometimes formally procure services from another section of the organisation. In these cases, the services are paid for from project funds and a contract or service agreement is also drawn up. The types of things which we may need to procure from a project may be contractors such as mechanics, IT specialists or tradespeople, tools and equipment, office supplies, rental of premises for an office or to hold an event. Not only does procurement involve seeking where to purchase or rent goods or services, it also means planning and managing them in the most cost-effective and productive way to ensure that the project gets the best value. This also means that the deliverables must conform to the quality standards and be delivered on time. As with every other project activity, procurement must be planned. At the beginning of the project, we need to decide exactly what we want to procure. It could be contractors, travel arrangements, or property rental. Every organisation has strict rules about how procurement should be undertaken. This is normally documented in a purchasing manual. The method of procurement will be set out in this manual according to what goods or services are being sought and also the amount of money being spent on those goods or services. For smaller purchases, sourcing 3 quotations is usually sufficient. For large purchases, often over $1 million, it is often necessary to undertake a formal tendering process. Many companies also have preferred supplier lists. These suppliers are pre-selected and must be used for procurement related to their particular line of business. This saves both time and money for the project. Procurement processes are expensive and take time, so it would be a waste of time and money to undertake a formal tender process for a small item worth a few $1,000s. Some organisations also have a centralised purchasing area that undertakes procurement on behalf of the project. When planning your procurement, you need to consider the following points. Ensure that you understand your organisation's rules regarding procurement. Failure to follow procedure can lead to serious problems for the person involved. Define exactly what it is you wish to procure. Allocate a budget for the items you need to procure. In some cases, you may need to do some market research to determine pricing and availability. You will need to include this in your project budget. It may be prudent to add some contingency for cases where the cost is not clear-cut. Often pricing can be driven by supply and demand. For example, if you require contractors with skills that are currently in great demand by the mining industry, which pays very well, you may also have to pay more in order to attract them to your company. And finally, determine the lead time you will need to select the supplier and also the lead time for delivery of the goods and services. You'll need to factor this into your project schedule. There are 5 major steps in the procurement process. Step 1 is to document your requirements. You need to ensure that the product or service requirements are clearly documented so that a prospective supplier will fully understand them and be able to provide you with accurate pricing. Step 2. Request prospective suppliers to provide responses. This may be through short quotations or via a formal tendering process. Step 3. Evaluate responses by comparing them against selection criteria and then make a decision or recommendation. Step 4. Obtain approval for your recommendation from the appropriate person. And finally, negotiate and sign the formal agreement or contract. It's important that your prospective supplier understands what they are going to provide a quote on, especially if you have requested a fixed price quote. Carefully document every requirement and number these for easy reference later on. You may also need to attach technical specifications if appropriate. Be clear about when you will require the goods or services, as this may impact the vendor's ability to deliver. Provide the vendor with any other information they may need, for example, information about the working environment or location or safety factors. Provide the date by which you require the response and also when you intend to make the final decision. When inviting others to respond to your request, you need to clearly define who will be asked and how the procurement will be managed. Inviting others to bid or offer their services ranges from simple phone call to the local supplier to the full range of tender requests and documentation. How extensive this step will be depends to a great degree on the type of project being undertaken and the particular goods or services required. You should predetermine how you are going to evaluate responses from your potential suppliers. Document your selection criteria and determine which of these are most important. Examples of selection criteria are suitability of product, availability, cost, quality, that is compliance with specification, and value for money. Often quantitative methods are used for evaluation by applying weightings to each of the criteria. Each item is scored and then multiplied by the weighting to result in an overall score. This then ensures that the supplier is selected according to the most important factors. This method is normally used for formal tenders, as it results in a well-documented outcome which can be justified in the event of any challenge by one of the bidders. Remember to always obtain approval from your manager or the project sponsor before proceeding with formalizing the selection. Sometimes management may have their own reasons why you should not proceed with your selected supplier. All agreements with vendors must be documented and signed by both parties. A contract is a binding agreement which often contains information sensitive to both parties and therefore must be carefully planned. For smaller items of procurement, the formal agreement may be between the project manager and the client. For larger procurements, or where there is a formal tender involved, the contract will be negotiated at a higher level of the organization with the participation of legal personnel. Even when a supplier is selected, there is usually a negotiation process required to pin down the finer points of delivery. Refer to Appendix A in Module 9 of the UNEP textbook for a detailed description of the negotiation process. Once the contract is signed, the project coordinator is often the person who is responsible for administering it. Contract administration involves holding regular meetings with the vendors to discuss progress and to ensure that the contract conditions are being adhered to. These meetings must always be formally minuted. Any changes to the agreed contract must be done according to an agreed change control or variation process, which must be approved by management of both parties. This process is part of the change control process discussed in Module 3, Scope Management. Should any disputes arise, then these should be handled using the procedures previously agreed and documented in the contract. This ends Module 9, Contract Management. Please read Module 9 in your UNEP textbook. You now need to complete the following procurement assignment for your case study project and submit it to your tutor. That is the procurement plan. Please refer to the case study, assignment instructions, and supporting templates.